Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark Stay.
And I'm Mark DeVoe, and we'd like to say thank you to everyone who is a sponsor of this podcast. That's all of you listening that support us on Patreon. If you'd like to join our merry, merry group of people in our BXP team, please get over to thebestsellerexperiment.com/support. And we'd also like to say thank you to all of our academates as well in the Bestseller Academy. All of you make this possible, and we salute you with all the incredible work that you're doing writing your books. And we are there supporting you every step of the way. Mr. Stay, how are you this week?
I'm very good. I'm very good indeed. I'm very excited about our guest because it's not often we get to... we haven't done this in a while. You know, all three of us talking to a guest together. This is really exciting. And it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful guest. And I think this is going to be a really, really cool episode. There's so much to talk about. We have got the wonderful Josie Lloyd on the podcast this week. Josie has written 15 best-selling novels. Also as Josie Lloyd, Joanna Rees. She's also written the #1 hit Come Together, which she co-authored with her husband, Emlyn Rees. Cowriting. Oh boy, we've got lots to talk about there. The book was #1 for 10 weeks, published in 27 languages and made into a working title movie. Josie's also written several best-selling parodies with Emlyn, including We're Going on a Bar Hunt. But Josie has a new book out. In 2017, Josie was diagnosed with breast cancer and urged by a friend to keep fit, she joined a running group on the Brighton seafront. And just before her third session of chemo, she ran the Brighton 10K. And out of that has come, from those experiences, has come her novel, The Cancer Ladies Running Club, which is inspiring and uplifting and the summer read. So, Josie, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, wonderful really, stuff. I'm tippity top.
Well, it's absolutely wonderful to have you, Josie. And we were just lamenting in the green room before we went online. Life with lockdown with teenagers. How much fun is that?
Well, you know, as I was saying, it was very, it was quite an interesting thing because when the lockdown happened, Emlyn and I have been writing at home since, you know, the dawn of time. We've been here writing novels together at home for 20 years. So when it first happened, everyone said, oh, we're going to be at home. We were like, we've got this, people. We do this all the time. But actually what I hadn't factored in was having 3 hungry teens marauding around the house is quite difficult, makes it quite difficult to concentrate. And also I realised something very fundamental about my writing process during lockdown, which was sort of partly about having the children around. I realised that for like 20 years that I've been writing, I've always been thinking, if only I had more time, if only I kind of didn't fill up my time with my social life or all the stuff that I do, if only I didn't go to so many lunches, if only I spent more time being a proper writer, I would get more writing done, right? And somehow during this very busy period of my life, my very busy life, I've managed to write all these novels and actually kind of get away with it. And so then I had lockdown and I had all the time in the world to write tumbleweed. I was just like, oh, this is really difficult. And then the teens are coming in every 3 seconds going, oh, I'm hungry. And I'm like, I can't write anything. What's happened? So yes, it was an interesting thing.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because I mean, I've worked from home for about 25 years and I felt that so much like, yeah, absolutely got this. Come on, guys. What tips do you want about writing from home? Yeah. And then what I didn't realize is that a lot of my work is doing this, like doing video online and streaming. Yeah. And every 2 minutes, I'm in there saying, will you turn off the Netflix? I'm trying to record a podcast. Yeah. And it's like all of a sudden, you know, you have to kind of like triple your bandwidth. I know, Mark, you've had the same problem, haven't you, in your house? It's like
I had to install an entire new internet. I mean, we've got a new antenna, cables around the house. Elon Musk launched a satellite for me. It's been a real bummer. Yeah, but we finally got it sorted.
I mean, I've had to learn to write with music on. And actually, I wrote my second. I've got my Beats headphones, but I wrote my second Joanna Rees book in my trilogy during lockdown, which was all set in Paris in 1928. And I've just done a sequel. So I did the sequel, which I finished recently, which is all set in 1929 in New York and stuff. So I've got a 1920s playlist that I play on my kind of headphones, which kind of helps infuse the writing a bit, which is quite good. So the kids kind of say, "What are you listening to?" And they'll be sort of like ding, 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 ding. Little 70s music. They're really bemused. So yeah, it's quite interesting. But I think it's for everybody who works at home, and everybody has had their writing and their kind of working life thrown upside down by this. And the fact that anybody's written anything at all is quite a miracle, to be honest.
Yeah. What do you think is the thing that changed, though? Because it's interesting. You said that you wish you had more time. What's caused the change, do you think, with lockdown and your writing?
I think that the main change is that I am quite a people person, even though I do something that's quite solitary. I'm quite a gregarious person, and I'm quite an extrovert. And I realise that I get a lot of my inspiration and a lot of my creative energy from all the other things that I do apart from writing, all the other people that I see. I love going and people watching in restaurants and trains and stuff. And actually, what I've really missed about lockdown is those days where I go to London on the train, I get there, I'm a little bit late for a meeting. I go in a cab, have a really profound conversation with a black cab driver, right? Go to an event, probably get a bit squiffy on free white wine. There's nothing better than Publishers free white wine, right? And then come back on the train, have a totally random conversation with somebody on the train, and maybe a bit of a sing-song as well. You never know. And that sort of thing really kind of is what feeds my creative energy, all those kind of stories. And I found, just looking at the same four walls and my family members, much as I love them to bits, I didn't really get that sense of creativity going that I normally do. And I realised that also I like writing on the hoof. What happens for me, my writing process is I sit in this study faffing about, like getting the dust from between my keys, and I refuse to move until I've written my 1,000 words. But what happens is that I'm just about to leave the house to go on on a school run or something, and a tiny snippet of a scene will come to me, or a little bit of dialogue, and I'm suddenly like that. And I can write 1,000 words really, really fast, but it won't come unless I've sat with bums on seats doing the kind of time until that moment arrives. And that is quite difficult when that gets interrupted.
We're obsessed with writers' routines and habits. Are you 1,000 words? So is that your target? And are you a write every day kind of person?
I have to write every day, and I have to do 1,000 words, because you can't actually write a novel unless you actually put the groundwork in. And I'm a great believer in getting it written and getting it right. I'm also, after all these novels, I've kind of realised that you never actually know what a novel is until you finish the last line. It's, for me, writing is very much like uncovering. And I've learned to trust that it's uncovering in the dark. And there's a really annoying thing that happens, that when you kind of finally revealed your novel, and you thought it was one thing, but it's actually turned out to be completely a different thing, and you've got the nature of the beast, and you've revealed this amazing sculpture of a novel, you go, if I'd known it was that, I'd have done it differently from the start. If I'd known it was that, I'd have done it completely different. And, so you always have that going on when you've done it. But it does feel like a clawing in the dark all the time. And so you just have to keep going, because if you stop, you can think too much, and you can just think, shit, I'm in the dark and I don't know what the hell I'm writing about. So that's where I go. So I learn more about, and I also I've learned more to trust my instinct, trust my subconscious mind. I think one of the greatest tools a writer has is the power of their subconscious mind. That it's all there. It's all churning over in the compost heap, and you just have to sit at a computer long enough for that shoot to come out of the compost heap. I love it. That's the key.
You've just hit two of my most favourite things in the world: gardening and subconscious mind.
I
love it. I love this idea of uncovering in the dark. It kind of reminds me of, like, I see my kids playing Minecraft or Age of Empires, and you don't see the map until you actually kind of move forward, and then it starts to reveal itself. And I love this idea that your novels kind of slowly reveal themselves to you. Now, for people that struggle to write even 200 words a day, of which we know there are many out there, which is our challenge. We have a challenge where we have lots of people, over 1,000 people writing 200 words a day. Some people get really stuck on this idea that they're not very good 200 words. Now, you write 1,000 words every day. How often would you say those 1,000 words are like top notch Josie kind of AAA star? And how often would you say you look at that and think that was a bad day at the office?
I think there are two things here. First off, I always write at the beginning of all of my documents, and the one thing is my mantra that I kind of is the thing that kind of can shut up my critic is you are free to work. I mean, this is the Natalie Goldberg phrase from of old. She Writing Down the Bones, which is one of the most influential books that I've ever read about writing. She says, you are free to write the worst crap in the world. And that is a very important thing to remember, that you are free to write absolute junk. So actually, I'm just going to get the words down. Interestingly, the kind of the hook of what I'm trying to write, the kind of little hook, the nugget tends to be the same. And it can be overblown. And quite often I've said it in those 1,000 words 20 times, 20 different ways. And so then it's a question of editing it down. And those 1,000 words quite often in the editing process become a paragraph, or eventually they get cut. But they've been part of the uncovering journey. And unless I had those 1,000 words down, I would never get to the really good bit. So there is quite a lot of thing. You have to get the words down in order to get the right words, if you see what I mean. For me, that's how. So the answer to the question is, sometimes on a miraculous day, I will write 1,000 words and it will pretty much be all there. Sometimes I will write 1,000 words and they will get cut. But you just have to keep the word count up, mainly because you have to just keep thinking in your mind. And actually, what I've noticed with my writing process, I go into my document and I read through the first chapters and I comb them. And every time I go into the first chapter, I always change a word or two, or rejig a paragraph or something, until by the time I've finished, it's so overblown and overwritten that the best thing I've learned to do is always to cut my first 2 chapters right at the very end.
Brilliant.
Right.
That's interesting, because we were told to cut the first chapter of our book, Back to Reality. And I'm hearing that's quite a common thing, isn't it? Because it's the warm-up, it's the stretch.
Yeah. And you don't need it. You usually don't need it, because you're writing your way into the characters, and actually you've defined them much better further on down the line. So
it just happened. I've written a film which will hopefully be out early next year, and it just happened with the opening scenes on that as well. It was like, actually, we don't need this. Cut to the chase,
Get to the action.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a particular routine in your day, Josie? Because you've written 19 books. That, by anyone's standard, is a lifelong achievement. I mean, some people would love to have done it. But
I've been doing it for a long time.
How's your structured day? Do you write 1,000 words at the same time each day, or how does it work?
Depends, but mainly I'm a morning person. So I get up and I do a qigong routine. So qigong is like Chinese yoga, basically, but it's kind of like slow moving, meditative, and I do it in my neighbours must think I'm an absolute scary, crazy woman, because I'm in my dressing gown with a bobble hat on and a pair of trainers, no socks, undone trainers, I might add, on my little stoop just here, and I do my deep breathing and I greet the day, and then I sit down, and then I don't. The only way I can get anything done is if I do it in the morning, first thing, and I haven't opened my email or looked at my phone. Because if I look at my phone, all my emails, I just get completely distracted. And the only way that I can actually get any work done is to do it before I've even looked at it. So usually I've written 1,000 words before 9:30.
That's brilliant. I like to call that banking it, because the things I've always said, we do a lot of coaching on the Academy, and one of the things that we've always talked about is the earlier you can write your words, the less probability there is that your day's going to go pear-shaped, right?
Yeah.
You can bank it in the morning.
You just have to do it first thing.
Yeah,
I mean, some people, it's horses for courses, though. Emlyn's much more of a 5 till 7 p.m. kind of a writer. He always gets into his writing at that sort of time of the day, but I have to do it early.
Well, let's talk about co-writing with him, because Mr. D and I, we co-wrote a book. It nearly destroyed our friendship. You've co-written, I think, at least 6 novels with Emlyn, plus parodies.
Yeah, 7, 5 parodies.
How do you stay sane and stay together, more importantly?
I mean, the thing is, our writing relationship was established way before we actually got together. So it's quite a funny story. So basically, I was writing my first novel, It Could Be You, which I was a completely green novice writer. So when I started writing my first book, I was working in sales promotion in an agency. So I was writing the back of Sugar Puffs packets, those cereal packet promotions. So I was writing Honey Monsters soccer pop-ups. And
Excellent.
And my epiphany moment came when I was writing a Coca-Cola promotion, and it was about 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and I was writing the terms and conditions that had to go in a tiny space that was going on a poster that was going on the back of loo doors in service stations, urging the staff to sell more Coke, and then they could get a baseball cap. I mean, I was like, no, I want to write a novel. I'm a novelist. So I really wanted to write a novel. So I jacked in my job and I sold the car, dumped my boyfriend, changed my life, got a job as a waitress. I know, I was really literally threw my toys out the car. I'm going to be a novelist. Anyway, so I sat down and wrote my first novel, It Could Be You. And I gave it to Dawn, who was a friend of mine from university. He was working at Random House. And she edited it for me, famously. Can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah, we just have to put a big E thing on it. Yeah.
So she wrote a star on one page, and 4 pages later she put another star, and in between she wrote, "One fuck too many." And that was her editorial advice. And so I was like, okay. So I rewrote the novel, and then it went up the chain in Random House until it got to this woman who said, well, this girl can write, but I'm off on maternity leave. She needs an agent, and Vivian Schuster at Curtis Brown owes me a favour. So she said, send it in to Vivian Schuster. So I sent it in to Viv, and Emlyn was Viv's assistant, and he read my first draft. And so I was called in to meet Viv, and I walked in, I cycled to the Haymarket, had no idea what an agent did. I was like, oh, so you're Jilly Cooper's agent and George McDonald Fraser's agent and Margaret Atwood's agent. I was like a bit awestruck, and I said, well, what are you going to do? She said, darling, come with me and I'll get you a book deal. And so she got me It Could Be You published, and Emlyn was the one who made me a cup of tea and helped me sign the contracts and said, I'll ring up the publishers and see if I can get you tube posters. I'm like, oh, you've got my vote. And we became kind of confidants. And he was working in Curtis Brown. He published his first novel. So we're in the sort of same boat. And then we used to go out drinking together and advising each other about our love lives. And he was writing his second novel. And one night we got very drunk. And the next morning he rang me up and he said, do you remember what we were talking about last night? And I was like, what? And he said, well, do you remember we said that we might write this all down and write a book together? And I can remember being my little hungover and going, let's give it a whirl. So we decided to write this book together, and he wrote the boy's point of view of a relationship and I wrote the girl's point of view of a relationship, but we weren't together. And it was like a novel of letters. So he would write one chapter, give it to me for a reaction, and I'd be like, you can't do that to my character. And I'd roll up my sleeves and I'd write, right. And I would write the next chapter. And this is before email, people. This is a very long time ago. And I would give it, and I would actually physically take the chapter to him, and he would read it and then physically print out a chapter and give it back to me. So that was how we kind of learned to write. We were kind of very much remotely writing together. But my main point was that I wanted to make him laugh. And I was writing, he was my audience. I wanted to make him laugh and to impress him. And that's how we got writing. So our writing relationship was very much formed before we actually got together. And then we did get together as a result of writing this book. And then we had to kind of learn to write together collaboratively. But it's always been, we've been in different studies, and we will kind of write alternate chapters and give it to each other for feedback. But as over the years, we've become a lot more collaborative. So with the parodies, for example, we kind of just sat down and just giggled about the whole thing and how we could make it funnier. And it was just, a fun. We're quite good at kind of pursuing ideas like that.
That's such a brilliant story. Now, I don't want details, but at what point during this writing process did you start to realise that you were falling in love?
Well, we were spending all this time together, and we were writing this real warts and all book about 20-somethings dating, and Jack and Amy meet each other at a club, and they kind of sleep together, and then they kind of deal with the fallout and kind of realise they actually kind of really liked each other. We, on the other hand, were being completely Victorian, and my friends were saying, do not blow it. Do not blow it with Emlyn, because he is your writing partner. You'd be signed up to Random House for 2 books. We'd had this massive book auction. We got a big deal with Working Title Film. It was all very exciting. And I couldn't blow it because he was my, he was the one person that I couldn't get together with because he was my writing buddy. Anyway, so we were spending all the time together. And eventually I said to them, but there was definitely kind of chemistry building between us. And we were in this restaurant in London, and I said, I'm going to talk about this. And he said, what? And I went, about this, this. And he went, absolutely not. I left the table. I was like, oh, that didn't go terribly well. That wasn't exactly how I planned it. Anyway, he came back about a minute later and he went, there are 10 really, really good reasons why we can't get together. And then I stood up and kissed him, and then he was bagged and tagged. That was it. Done. Boom.
Bagged and tagged. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Bagged and tagged. I love it.
Yeah.
What a brilliant story.
22 years of marriage and 3 kids later, and we're still very, very happy.
That's just to honour you both. How incredible that you've gone through this journey. You've got your 3 wonderful kids. You're in a lockdown, and everything's going great. I mean, that's such an inspiration to everyone out there, because I hear a lot of stories about lockdown and relationships right now. Yeah. There's a lot of people out there who are struggling because they're not used to having so much time. But actually, you know what? The fact that you've done this and this is how you've always worked together, probably your saving grace.
Well, we've always been together 24/7. Since the beginning. So we're very used to spending time with each other. We're a bit uselessly joined at the hip, actually, because we don't really spend that much time apart from each other. But as a result, we are very, very close friends, as well as husband and wife. So and it's nice to sort of work together. So we're very lucky in that respect. But it does boil down, as I say to my friends who are struggling with all things in COVID times, it does boil down to kindness. People say, what is the secret to a good relationship? What is the secret to your love? And it's kindness is actually the key for everything. That's all you need, just to be kind.
Well,
here's
no
secret.
Here's a lumpy segue to your latest book. Let's talk about kindness and friendship.
Segue.
I love good old lumpy
segue. See what you did there.
Oh, I've done this before.
Well done.
This, of course, is a solo effort, Josie Lloyd novel, and and with good reason. This has got. Would it be fair to say this is possibly your most personal book? Yeah.
And it's one that I had to write. I mean, it felt very strongly that I had to write this book. Mm-hmm. So I was called for a scan, a routine scan. So they said, we're testing women under 50 to do voluntary mammograms. Would you like to come for a mammogram? And I said, oh God, okay, I'll go. But it was just before Christmas, and I was so busy, I nearly didn't go. But Emlyn said, go, because I'd noticed this tiny, tiny dimple appear in the bottom of my left breast. But you could only see it when I put my arms over my head. It was not something I'd been to the doctor about it, and they'd said, oh no, there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to worry about. Anyway, I mentioned this in the scan, and the woman said, well, we will call you back as a matter of course, because if you've noticed any kind of change in your breast tissue, we'll call you back. So I knew that there was going to be another appointment coming. So we had Christmas, and then it was my sister's 50th. We had a big party in Bath, and we had her birthday on the 1st of January. And on the 3rd of January, I get to my scan appointment. And I'm still, to be honest, half woman, half champagne at this point. I haven't really taken it in. And then I realised that I'm in the quiet room, which I wrote about in the first chapters, and I realised that they're kind of sitting me down and telling me that they've seen unusual breast tissue, and boom, I have breast cancer. And it was just such a massive, massive shock. And one of the things that I did, because I'm a writer and because I kept a diary of it. I kept a journal of the whole thing. And one of the things that really struck me so strongly for me when it happened to me was I suddenly went from being Josie with kind of a career and Emlyn and girls and a nice house in Brighton and all nice social life. All of that was erased. I was suddenly, she's got cancer. You know, I'm suddenly labelled. I felt like this massive, giant, great big brand had been put on my forehead, and people started treating me differently, and I wasn't allowed to have a sense of humour. And, you know, it was very, I was suddenly, everything that was about me was suddenly erased. Anyway, it was a very kind of important book for me to write, and I really wanted to write about it just to do some debunking, because 1 in 8 women in this country get breast cancer. We all know, you will know, we all have been affected by breast cancer, any kind of cancer. 1 in 2 of us are going to get cancer in our lifetimes, and yet we don't speak about it. It's very behind, people are very about cancer, and it really is the bogeyman, and we need to kind of start talking about it. We need to start opening up the conversation like they are in Australia with skin cancer, for example, where it's part of their culture and people talk about it and they talk about prevention. It's got to stop being this kind of very scary thing, because there are many, many women like me who are not just surviving but thriving. There's lots of people who don't survive. I'm not whitewashing it, and I'm not trying to put a soft soap on it, but there are lots of people who are thriving the other side of cancer, and we need to talk about those stories, as well as cancer, particularly in fiction, is always used in such a mawkish, terribly earnest and heartbreaking way, and actually your life doesn't stop because you've got cancer. You don't stop being a mum. You don't stop having problems at work. You don't stop being a wife or a friend. You know, all of it, life still goes on. So I really wanted to write a slice of nice life novel about that.
Now, for people that didn't see on the video, Mark holding up the book, it's the Cancer Ladies Running Club.
I have a copy here.
You have a copy here. It's a beautiful cover. I love the blue.
Yeah, this can be good. Hopefully, it was supposed to come out last year, so I'm very excited about it coming. They pulled it because of COVID, but it's coming out in May. So
now, the story behind this book is that you wrote this journal during your own journey, and I'm curious, you decided to write it as you kind of used it as inspiration for a fiction book. What was the reason you decided to do fiction rather than kind of like almost like a kind of a non-fiction about your personal journey?
Because I wanted it, because I'm a fiction writer, and I've never really written non-fiction. There's also quite a lot of non-fiction books about cancer and people's journeys and stuff. And I wanted something that was a women's commercial fiction book out there. There was not women's, but a commercial fiction read for everybody that was accessible. And it took me quite a while, actually, because also quite a lot of the stuff in the book happened to me. So Roz, one of the mums at the school, said, "You've got to keep fit," when I got diagnosed. And I went, "No, I'm going under my duvet, thank you very much." And she went, no, you've got to keep fit. You know, they're building gyms in oncology wards in Australia. You've got to keep fit. Anyway, so I went down to the seafront to meet her group of runners, who are these women who were all going through cancer. And it was a bit like being very heavily pregnant and meeting new mothers, because I was assaulted with all these kind of terrifying stories of what I was about to face. But I also really liked all their gallows humour, and actually that they were quite irreverent about what was going on. And anyway, so I landed up running with them. And about 3 weeks in, I went down and there was a press reporter there, and they went, "Oh, it's so great, you're doing the Brighton Marathon 10K." And I was like, "The what?" And Roz went, "Oh, didn't I tell you?" I was like, "No, you actually did not." She said, "Oh, no, this is the Brighton Marathon 10K training group." So anyway, so I landed up running the Brighton Marathon 10K, as you mentioned before, just before my third chemo. So I was running bald, and I didn't even know whether I'd get around. I just thought I'll give it a whirl. Anyway, so as I was running, all these women kept coming up to me and tapping me on the shoulder and going, "Clear 5 years, keep going." clear 2 years, keep going. And they're all running for kind of cancer charities. And I was like, oh, this is really amazing. And then halfway around the race, I saw this woman, picture of health, gorgeous hair. She said, oh, I had stage 4 cancer. They'd written me off, but I ran all the way through my running treatment and I'm fit as a flea. And she was wonderful. We had this lovely little chat and off she went. And then on the last turn of the race, she'd waited for me. And she said, oh, I've been waiting for you. And I said, what is it? She said, I just want to have a chat with you. And I said, what about? And she said, well, when I was going through my treatment, I was at my lowest ebb. And I was in a cafe in London. And this woman across the cafe spotted me and said, listen, I know what you're going through. I've been there. We've all been there. But I want you to know that your life is going to be better than ever on the other side of cancer. And she'd taken off this little necklace, this little butterfly necklace that she'd given to this runner. And the runner then said, I have been wearing this necklace that I still wear. See this little necklace, butterfly necklace. She said, I've been wearing this little butterfly for 3 years. And I realise now that it's time to pass it on. And I want it to now be your little butterfly of hope. And she said, I want you to wear it and know that your life will be better than ever the other side of cancer. And I was like, wow. We had this like lovely little hug and a few tears and off she went. And I don't even know her name. And I was so inspired by this kind of butterfly of hope necklace story and so touched that she'd given me this beautiful sort of little talisman that I could just wear and know that and remind me of that amazing day that I can sort of, this is a really good hook for a book. This is what I'm going to write about. So then it was very easy to write to take that and my experience and pull it all together. But it took me quite a few iterations before I could really fully take Kira's story and make it her own and not mine. And putting all the stuff in with her fight with Lorna and her business partner and that conflict was what really kind of propelled it into fiction. So it was quite an arse over tit way of writing a novel, to be honest, you know.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Now, you know how serendipity works in this world. If the lady who gave you the butterfly of hope is actually listening to this interview, right?
Please.
If anyone knows who this lady is that ran the gives the details, it was the Brighton 10K.
The Brighton 10K in 2018.
Okay.
2017.
2017, and this lady looked like she had
dark hair. She must have been about my age. She must have been about 45, 50. Yeah. And she said that she'd had cancer and that she was, I don't know what type of cancer she'd had actually, but she said that she'd had cancer. But she gave me this little necklace, which is very sweet. So yeah. So
everyone check out the necklace on the YouTube recording. And if we can get hold of her, will you send her a copy of her book?
Oh God, yes.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah, and actually what's really exciting marketing wise, my friend Alice, who runs Posh Totty, which is kind of a personalized jewelry kind of company, is quite a famous jeweler. She's making little butterfly of hope necklaces to be marketed with the book.
Oh, fantastic.
Never had a marketing thing before to go with the book, but that's very exciting. So so we're going to be giving those out as there's going to be some promotions to kind of win some, because when you get cancer, it's very difficult because people give you flowers and they don't really know what to say to you. They really feel that they need to give you a gift and they give you flowers, which is great. But then you run out of vases and then your house after a week looks like a mausoleum and it's really horrifying. And
if you've got hay fever, you're absolutely...
Oh, it's just... and then you're kind of like down to the jam jars and all the gravy dishes, the gravy jugs. And I mean, with these beautiful flowers that people have said. So, it's nice to be able to give something to somebody that means something. So I hope this carries on, this butterfly of hope necklace as a result of this book.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, let's talk a bit about how this changed your life, because obviously there's a stage when you first get the news and you go into shock because you never think it'll happen to you. How did you kind of come out of that stage, and how did you start living your life in any way differently once you realized what was happening?
Well, that's a very good question. And actually that's what I really wanted to write about, is what happens when this terrible shock happens to you, and then you're on a journey. You've left the old shores of you and you're traveling to the new you, but you don't know how that's going to be when you get there, or if you're going to get there. How has it changed me? Well, kind of in many ways. One of the things that I came to as a great realization about it was that I have been busy for 30 years, just as a person, busy, really living by that mantra. If you want something done, ask a busy woman. I was that woman. I'm kind of always loading stuff on and very happily doing everything for everybody else. So really, putting a lot into being a mum and a friend and a wife and, a writer, but not anywhere on that list was looking after myself. And I realized that I'd put myself down really at the bottom of my list. So if somebody was doing a yoga, wanted to do a regular yoga class, but more often than not, something would happen and somebody would want something done, or somebody would ask me somewhere, and I would kind of go, oh, forget the yoga, I'll just do that. And I'd always kept relatively fit, but I'd never actually checked in with myself. And one of the greatest shocks was the fact that cancer had happened on my watch, that I hadn't noticed really. And I was just like, wow, I hadn't really checked in with myself. So now I live my life in a way that's much more, I hate the word, but mindful of how I am. So that's part of the morning routine, is kind of just to make sure that I've checked in with myself, that I know how I am. And I'm kind of much more conscious about the choices that I make. I mean, I still eat and drink and do everything that I want, but I kind of do so in a much more sort of conscious way. So if I get hammered, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll take one for, I'm not going to beat myself up, but I'm not going to do it every night. I'm going to do it once in a while. So it's that sort of thing, kind of, and maybe that sort of coincides with getting older as well. One of the greatest things that I think you need to do, though, when you have been through this process, is to be able to leave it behind and to be able to choose to be well. And I say that with caution, because I people say, well, you can't choose to be well if you've got cancer, but you can. If you've been told that your cancer treatment's over and that you're well, you then have to be well. And actually the worst bit of the cancer treatment was the bit after it had all finished. So all the hospital appointments have finished. I've been through the operation, I've been through the chemo, I've been through the radiotherapy. And then suddenly everything stops. Your hair grows back and everyone thinks that you're back to normal. But that's when the shock hits of it. And you have the psychological trauma of it hits you then. And you're kind of on your own. And that was very important for me to write about as well in my characters, to kind of bring that in as well. And it is takes quite a long time to get back on your feet. But I remember watching a program on the menopause that Kirsty Walk had done whilst I was going through my cancer treatment. And she interviewed Jennifer Saunders, who I love, who I have greatest admiration for. And she'd had breast cancer. And she was talking to her about the menopause. And then she said to Jenny, how do you feel about breast cancer now? And she went, oh God, cancer. Yeah, I never think about that. And just the way she did that, she kind of dismissed it. It was gone. It was in the past. And I thought, well, that's what I want. This is not going to define me. And so, which you might think is a bit odd to be writing a book about cancer, but I feel that in some ways this is a kind of being able to say, no, this is something that's part of my life and has been part of my life, but I'm over it and I'm, moving on. So I think that's what I hope it will help people understand when they read it. I didn't write it for people who are going through cancer as a self-help book. I wrote it for a fiction book to try and make other people understand what the experience is like.
Yeah, it's just fascinating what you were saying about people, like when you left and you had your final kind of chemo treatment and you were kind of signed off, so to speak. That's a huge, huge part, I think, which has to improve, isn't it? Whereby people just get left on their own, having gone through the trauma of all that. And it's all about focusing on the problem there's no support from that point onwards. And that's one of my big bugbears. It's like, let's see if we can get people inspired within the health systems to actually really get people back to full health. And it's not just about, go do some exercise. It's about all the mental things you have to go through as well afterwards.
Yeah, I know, and it does take time. I think it takes time to sort of come to terms with the fact that it's happened to you, and you do go through a sort of stage where you kind of mourn your health. There's a real grief that you feel for the kind of old you. But I think it's really important to be able to embrace the new you, that you go, okay, well, I am here, and I'm just going to really go for it and really love my life and live it to the full. And I think you have to give yourself permission to do that and not be defined by something that happened to you.
Excellent. Yeah. Now let's talk a bit about the gallows humour, because I'm guessing there's probably quite a lot of it in the book.
Yeah.
And it goes back to your point, Josie, about people being afraid to talk about it, and oh my gosh, God forbid, laugh about it. But tell us a bit about how your journey, kind of portrayed in the book.
Well, it's quite fun to write about it in the book, because there's quite an amalgam of lots of different, because it's about how everybody reacts, and I've kind of put in, because people are so well-meaning, when people get cancer, and nobody really knows how to be, and so people say really inappropriate things. And one of the things that Kira is up against, which I found quite funny, but I know I've really exaggerated it for the comic effect, is when you get cancer, one of the things that happens is that everybody wants to tell you their cancer stories. So you don't want to have anything to do with your own cancer. You are horrified that you have cancer. You don't want to be associated with it. But now you are a cancer magnet, and everybody is going to tell you about their uncle who had pancreatic cancer and died in 3 weeks, or their aunt who had every single part of her body chopped off and she's still going strong, although she's got a bit of a gammy hip now, and so everybody tells you all these stories about it. But as soon as cab drivers, my love talking to cab drivers, but the amount of times I was regaled with stories of, cancer, oh yeah, my cousin had cancer. And you come up with these horrific details of this awful, slow and painful and torturous death. And you'd be like, no, don't tell me. So, things like that made me laugh. And also everybody, there's a brilliant character in it that I really enjoyed, who's one of the school mums. And she's just getting really bossy. She just wants to be the epicenter of the person who's just been really caring about cancer. And it's the one that's going to coordinate all the school mums with all the dishes. And this is so poor Kira is kind of left with this mountains of food, and people have brought around casseroles and everything. She has no idea how to sort of Tetra pack them into the freezer, and all the, and her husband's like, well, we can cook. Why have we got all this food? It's that sort of thing. So, it's stuff that happens, but with a bit of a comic edge on it. So it was really fun to write. And I haven't offended any of my friends, I can tell you, because, my friends are wonderful. And it is about, the main point about this book is about friendship. It's about old friends and new friends, and it's about a friend that you can make for 60 seconds that will have a lasting effect. But it's about female friendship.
Fantastic stuff. And it sounds, I've got to say this, it sounds like it could be an incredible film or TV show as well. Is that something which you're hoping for the book?
The Holy Grail. Come on, chaps. Yes, wouldn't it be lovely? Yes, yeah. Well,
it's got all the feelings of a Richard Curtis kind of, yeah.
Yeah, come on, film company.
So we just put it out there. So just two things we're asking for today, folks. Yeah. If you're out there in Hollywood land, we want the Butterfly of Hope ladies to show up, and we'd like to land a book deal. A film deal.
Thank you, please.
Hollywood.
Yes,
let's go Hollywood.
Yeah, I think there's agents on it, but it's very difficult to get anything made, as we all know. It is the Holy Grail, obviously, to have something made into a film. We had Come Together made into a film, and we wrote the screenplay, and it was very exciting. And Eric Fellner at Working Title said that it was one of the best first drafts that he'd ever read, and we were very excited about it. And then they greenlit Bridget Jones and said, we're not going to make it now at Working Title Film, but you can go to Working Title Television, where we probably got fired of the project, having written several iterations of the script. So there was quite a lot of a learning experience there. But I loved writing scripts and I love kind of being involved in that. But it's, I think you have to kind of choose what you're going to do and stick at it. And it was quite interesting getting cancer, actually, because when I was kind of very ill, I kind of thought, what is it that I want to do? Because this is a big crossroads in my life. Do I want to continue being a novelist with all the highs and lows that goes with it? That, sometimes it's brilliant, sometimes it's terrible, sometimes you get money, sometimes you're poor as church mice. That's how it is. It's not consistent. And I kind of really decided, no, I really want to be a novelist. This is what I do. This is how I am. This is how I roll. So, I mean, actually, I'm just delighted to be able to be given the chance to write more and to keep doing what I love. Because the more you write, the better you get. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. And there's a big, I know it's sort of frustrating because there's the whole, the publishers really want to go for the new, and they kind of go, oh, it's the first time novelist, and it's the new. They always want the new, but actually you learn so much as you write more, that actually the authors with more experience are the ones that need investment. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. So what's coming next from you, Josie?
Well, I am writing my next Josie Lloyd book, which is working title is called The Seagulls, and it's about a group of plucky women who go sea swimming in the cold water. And it's been interesting because I started it on Christmas Day in 2020. So I'm writing it sort of in real time now. And I do sea swim quite a lot. So I am involved in kind of those crazy women who go with dry robes and bobble hats. That's me. So it's quite an interesting thing to write about, but it's been an interesting thing. I mean, I don't know whether I will land up editing it, but I wanted to write something that was in real time, set in these days that we have, because for fiction writers, particularly for contemporary fiction writers, do we mention COVID? Do we mention lockdown? Do we mention how it is? So I've wanted to find a way of writing a book about the positives that have come out of COVID rather than what we've lost, what we've gained. And actually for lots of us, including me, it's been a bigger appreciation of nature, a bigger appreciation of my environment, a bigger understanding of a community that I have locally. So it's all of those things that I'm writing about, which is quite fun. So I'm about a third of the way through that one. So that will be out next year. But I mean, I might land up editing it depending on where we get to with COVID. I mean, who knows? It might all be a dim and distant memory, or it might be something that's
it's interesting. It's a debate I see on a whole bunch of writers groups on Facebook. I mean, now listeners, this is going out in May, but we're recording this towards the end of March, and there is light at the end of the tunnel with regards to lockdown. So we're still in lockdown when we're recording this, but Line of Duty has just gone on TV, and that's set in real time, but no mention of COVID. It's in a parallel universe now where there's no COVID. And so there's a whole bunch of authors I know who are just I'm going to pretend it never happened and just get on with it. And there are others who are thinking, no, I really write in the real world. It's had a profound effect on me. I have to acknowledge what happened. So it's going to be fascinating seeing how writers cope with that and how the reading public, because just today in the bookseller, some people were signed up with, deals about, this is going to be the definitive COVID novel. I know I don't want to read. I don't want
to read it.
No.
Personally, I don't want to read it. And so I'm trying to navigate writing something that's real and true and honest whilst including it, but
a light sprinkling. Really. A light sprinkling is all it needs, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be fascinating in years to come. I think almost more so in years to come, when generations will be reading books that are written in this time, because it'll be almost like a historical point.
Well, I mean, I am old enough now for that to have actually happened to me in real life, because our book was included. Somebody got in touch with us and said, we're using Come Together as a definitive 90s guide to culture. because it's kind of like, because it was before mobile phones, it's dating before mobile phones, it's kind of, it was, and it had like a lot of references to what was going on in London. So actually that has already happened, that I am a historical documenter.
We completely missed a trick here, Mr. D. We should have, because our book, Back to Reality, is about time travel and she goes back to the mid-90s. And we should have read your book. If it's the definitive, that should have been our first book. We're going to have to rewrite, Mr. D. We're going to have to do a complete rewrite.
Yeah, we have to do it again. Oh my God.
Although I have to give you a warning that somebody did actually contact me from Cosmopolitan because they'd done an article on sex scenes in books, and they'd given readers the task of checking them out, and somebody had written in and said that one of the sex scenes that I'd written on the stairs had given them a cerebral neck and that they were really injured.
Like your book's become the Kama Sutra.
Yeah.
The Kama
Don't take
Dotra.
it too literally, is all I'm saying.
No one's ever brought up the sex scene in our bookmark. We have to.
My wife did. Don't worry.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Interesting. And that was very much after mobile phones, because it's a sex scene that involves social media.
Yeah.
I won't say any more. You must read it, Josie.
I can't wait. I can't. I'm getting it. I want it. That sounds great.
Here's a question for you. I mean, your book sounds so inspiring. I think it's going to inspire people who are, connecting with what cancer must be like, having experienced COVID, because it's life-threatening in many ways for people. So we're all kind of at that point in our lives where we recognize that there's some much bigger things that are important than what we often kind of worry about on a day-to-day basis. But for people who are listening to this now, Josie, or in years to come, and maybe have been recently diagnosed with cancer or have been on a cancer journey for a long time, or even people who've been alongside someone with a cancer journey, some people either who are caring for a cancer a patient. Again, I don't like to use that word as well, because you don't get defined by having cancer, or people who have lost people with cancer. What would you say to inspire them about writing during their process?
I think for me, it was absolutely, completely and totally fundamental to my journey through cancer and my recovery post-cancer. And I cannot stress highly enough how important journaling it is. They've done some quite interesting studies. I was reading a thing on a cancer site. They've done some very interesting studies about the effect of journaling your kind of thoughts on the effects of the treatment on people. And they found that the people who write down how they're feeling have much better outcomes. It's a scientific fact, mainly because when you go through cancer, you have so many feelings, and you do actually have to create quite a front for the people that are caring for you in a lot of ways, because you don't want them. You can see that they are frightened and worried. And similarly, if you're somebody caring for somebody with cancer, you can't tell them how absolutely terrified you are. You can't put that on them. So having somewhere where you can safely write it down and write down all those feelings, once you've written them down, they've kind of gone. They've lost their power. And I've always found that if you've had something in your mind that's really bothering you, if you write it down, you can actually see it, whether it's true or not. And quite often, all of the fears that you write down, once you've got them on the paper, you can actually really see clearly that they're, I'm going to die within a fortnight. Well, that's not true. That's not true. That's not what I've been told by the medical team. That's what's going on in here. But writing that down, you can get rid of that. So I think it's absolutely crucial and very important that people should be encouraged to write. And I would say to anybody going through any kind of cancer treatment or looking after somebody with cancer, just get a notepad and just write it all down. And it doesn't, nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to judge you on it. But the more you write and the more you write about what you're going through, the easier it will be to process it all.
And the gift one day, Josie, is you may end up potentially sharing that with other people, which is what you've done. So I'm very it's a little bit scary putting it out there, because the Kira's journey and her medical journey that she goes on is very much matches mine. So I've been quite warts and all about kind of what it feels like to have your left breast chopped off. I mean, I'm not mincing my words here. So it's interesting kind of writing
that kind of stuff and having those things out in the world. But I also think it's really important to be honest. I think it's really important to be authentic about this kind of experience and to write about it from the heart and right honestly. So, you know, I'm just going to see how it goes down with people. But I'm very proud of it. And, you know, I just feel very, I feel very strongly that it's such a personal book, and it's such a book with a message of positivity and hope. And it's uplifting. You know, I don't want people there are make them laugh, make them cry. There you go. That's the formula.
Absolutely.
That is a great place to end our conversation. Josie, it's been just wonderful hearing you talk about your experiences, the way you write, and the Cancer Ladies Running Club, which is out now, folks. So grab your copy immediately. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast supplier. Thanks, as always, to our editors, Dave and JD. If you want to get in touch, drop us a line at bestsellerexperiment.com. There's a contact tab there, and we're all over social media. So we're on Facebook as Bestseller Experiment, Twitter and Instagram as @bestsellerxp. Josie, where can folks find you online?
I am on Instagram at Josie Lloyd Writer. I am on Facebook at Josie Lloyd Writer, and I am on Twitter at Josie Lloyd Books. So you can find me. But I'm not the world's greatest social media person, but I do give it a whirl. I put some of my terrible pictures up on Instagram, so you know, do find me if you'd like to get in touch.
Brilliant stuff, Josie. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
And it's so nice to meet you.
And thank you so much for sharing your journey, being vulnerable, putting yourself out there, writing this book. Thank you for the inspiration you're giving everyone out there and all the future people that will treasure that book, I'm sure. And also, thank you so much for the brilliant laugh we've had today. I've really enjoyed this. It's been absolutely great. What a brilliant. It's very early in the morning here in Vancouver, and this is just the best start to my day ever. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And if you would like to follow Josie's recommendations of writing every day, then join the 200-word challenge. It's 200wordchallenge.com. Even if it's just journaling, folks, you don't even have to write a book. Just get writing and see what happens. And if you're interested in joining the Academy, hop along to academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. Josie, it's absolutely brilliant. Have a fantastic rest of your week. We wish you all the success with your new book.
Oh, thank you, guys. That's really lovely of you.
And we look forward to maybe having you back on the show another time to share your ongoing journey with us.
Thank you. I look forward to that.
Brilliant. So it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a goodbye from Mark 2. Goodbye.
Goodbye.